Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the True North Report. News every Canadian needs to know. So it's been some time since I've been reporting on what's going on, but I decided it was time to come back. So let's get into the details. I decided that most of what I'm going to be focusing on today is some updates on what's been going on with Jeffrey Epstein. Last time we were talking about him was just after his murder ended up taking place, and then some of the details that were surrounding that situation there. Since then, there have been more details that have been released, which just makes the story sketchier and sketchier. Now, of course, last time I was here talking about this, I was reporting on how Jeffrey Epstein was an asset for the Mossad, how everything he was doing, his blackmail ring that he was running, was really for this Israeli the Israeli Secret Services. And he was doing it so that way they can gain dirt onto some of the biggest billionaires, politicians, celebrities in the U.S. and around the world, because this way they have him in compromising positions, and then he could manipulate them to do whatever is necessary. Now, it seems that this is, the more details that have come out, this is more likely. Let's not forget that when everything happened with Jeffrey Epstein, it turns out that he had a passport, a Saudi Arabian passport with a fake name on it. And the reason for this kind of makes sense. The reason they wouldn't want to actually have Jeffrey Epstein having an Israeli passport is quite simple, because then it'd be easier to trace him back to being an asset for the Mossad. But Saudi Arabia is very close to Israel. If he was to land in Saudi Arabia, it would not take him long to cross if he had to escape to get into Israel, which is where a lot of people believe that he truly ended up. Some believe that Jeffrey Epstein was not murdered on the night that he was his quote-unquote suicide, but that he was in fact was replaced by a body double, was rushed out of the prison, and then was shipped off, whether that's to Israel or somewhere else. Now, the reason I was not keen on this idea of Jeffrey Epstein being alive and there was just a body double that was put in place is the fact that it would require a lot of planning, resources, and is a much riskier execution than simply killing a man. And it's been proven that time and time again, many intelligence agencies all across the world, when it's just an asset, are willing to burn that asset, and that may mean even letting that asset die if necessary to avoid the bigger plan for being exposed. Now, if this ended up getting exposed, that Jeffrey Epstein, truly getting exposed, that Jeffrey Epstein was working for the Mossad in a blackmail ring that would involve former presidents, possibly the current president of the United States, as well as many billionaires, CEOs, and celebrities, then that's going to cause quite a bit of backlash when it comes from people such as the U.S. government. Perhaps. It would give quite a big lashback, because they would not be happy about this situation, and that might jeopardize some of the I'll call them deals, although it's really the manipulation that the Israeli government has over the U.S. right now, which is that they use the U.S. to fight their wars for them, while at the same time giving billions of dollars every single year to Israel. Israel makes a profit while the U.S. has been going consistently into debt every single year. Now, this could possibly jeopardize that situation, although I don't really think it would, considering the power that AIPAC has in the U.S. This would probably overcome. They'd be able to manipulate the situation, and of course the Israeli government would deny any sort of responsibility. Most likely what they would do is what the CIA has done in the past when it comes to situations where they've been caught with their hands in the cookie jar, which is they would deny that it was anything official. They would try and pass it off as this was, a few bad eggs that were working outside of the knowledge of the Mossad, the knowledge of the Israeli government, the Israeli military. I mean, this is in a lot of ways what ended up happening in the Iran-Contra affair when Oliver North took the fall for what was going on when the Reagan administration was arming the Contras. And then when they when the government wanted to stop arming the Contras, they ended up selling weapons to the Iranians and using the profits to give to the Contras so they could keep up their war over in South America. Now, when this was exposed, Oliver North, being the good soldier that he was, fell on his sword for his commander, in this case, President Reagan. And this was probably something similar that would have ended up happening. It's possible, and actually there's some details which actually, in my opinion, does actually give some credence to the idea that Jeffrey Epstein is still alive and possibly out there, although it's not a guarantee, and we're going to get into that today. But it's just a possibility of some of the news that was exposed within the last month. And this story flew under the radar, and I didn't even hear about it until very recently. But it's worth talking about. So the other big news when it came to the Epstein thing is how we found out that ABC News was actually covered up the Epstein story for 3 years. 3 years they covered up this story. And this was coming right from one of their own, the mouth of one of their own anchors. An anchor on ABC News, Amy Robach, who is the host, one of the co-hosts of Good Morning America. She was caught on a hot mic that was released by Project Veritas back at the beginning of November. Now, what she ended up saying was startling, and it just shows the cover-up that the Mockingbird media, the lengths that they will go to ensure that their friends are not the ones that are going to be brought down by this whole situation. So, we have here the video clip that was released on November 5th of 2019, and I'm sure you've heard about it. I'm sure most people have seen this by now. It was a huge story when it was released. Everyone in the alternative media was talking about it, and it received so much weight. The waves were so huge that even the corporate media had to talk about it, because if they did it, ABC tried to avoid it as best they could, but everyone else in the corporate media was talking about this situation. And conveniently, this was 3 years ago when Amy Robach was talking about this situation, and the reason ABC was covering this up, because it was right in the middle of these elections, the presidential elections that were going on, and Amy Robach herself said that she had the Clintons. She had them dead to rights with her story that she was trying to push. So let's take a quick look at it, just a little bit.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed, because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying, there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
So there she is, in her own words, explaining how she had this story, how she could have exposed this story, and she wanted to expose the story, but the higher-ups at ABC News were not going to allow it to happen. They weren't going to allow it to happen because of the bad press it was going to bring to Jeffrey Epstein, the bad press it was going to bring to the Clintons, and how this actually, if this had come out, this story, where we knew that Bill Clinton was riding the Lolita Express, was a good friend to prolific pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, it would have, first of all, sunk the Clintons most likely, although, again, the connection that Trump has back to Jeffrey Epstein is concerning in and of itself. It seemed in the past, Trump has said that, like he's talked about how Jeffrey Epstein, he liked to hang out with younger women. There's also some story about how he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, because he was trying to recruit some underage women there. Well, girls, they were not. If you're underage, you're a kid. So, but I think more than anything, the reason that they covered this up is because then that would have exposed the American people to the fact that their government, and not just their government, but governments all over the world, including the royals over in Britain, it would have shown how this idea of the international pedophile rings, the political pedophile rings, how it's a reality, how two candidates for the presidency was wrapped up with as she put it, one of the most prolific serial pedophiles in the entire country, and even in the entire world. Maybe not the most prolific one, because I've said that I felt that Jimmy Savile was worse, because the things that guy got away with was unbelievable. But then it would have gone back to the royal family, because we know that Prince Andrew was involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and we know that Jimmy Savile was good friends with, I think it was Prince Charles, but he was good friends with the royals. And this would have gotten back to them, which is why they wanted it covered up, one of the reasons. This is from Zero Heads, Epstein's tapes. Sordid case takes a bizarre turn after mystery hacker emerges. This is from the 1st of December. Shortly after Jeffrey Epstein's August death in a Manhattan detention facility, a shadowy figure claiming to have set up encrypted servers for the convicted sex offender told several attorneys and the New York Times he had a vast archive of incriminating evidence against powerful men stored on overseas server, including several years' worth of financiers' communications and financial records, which allegedly show he had a vast amount of Bitcoin and cash in the Middle East and Bangkok, and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of gold, silver, and diamonds. Going by the pseudonym Patrick Kessler, self-described hacker said he had thousands of hours of footage from hidden cameras from Epstein's multiple properties, which include former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, lawyer Alan Dershowitz, and Prince Andrew, along with 3 billionaires and a prominent CEO, according to the Times. It has been long speculated that Epstein recorded his high-profile guests as part of an international blackmail operation. Just give me one sec. Just getting over being a little sick right now, so sometimes the cough is coming up. So this story flew under the radar, if you ask me. I have not heard a lot of people that have been discussing this, because this would change everything. We've been looking for the evidence that Jeffrey Epstein had, because we know that he's had hidden cameras all over his island, all over his mansion, and everywhere that he's lived, for reasons such as this. So that way he can, no matter when and where it happens, he can capture the information. He can capture the information on any of these political elites, celebrity elites, billionaires, CEOs. He always has that information. So far, I have not heard much about it, but this is exactly the evidence we've been looking for. Now, what concerns me is I have no confidence in the FBI to actually do the right thing. The FBI have proven themselves to be, I don't want to even use the word incompetent, because that almost lets them off as they weren't doing their job properly. This is deliberate what they're doing. Remember, it was the FBI that raided Epstein's island soon after he was murdered, back in September, I think it was, of this year. September when they raided the island. Epstein was murdered in August, if I'm remembering correctly. So they raided his island, and they were taking away boxes upon boxes of supposed evidence. But have any of you seen any of this evidence since? We have drone footage here of them going in. We have drone footage of them On the island, this was, I don't remember the name, Rusty Shackleford, I think that's the name of the guy who ended up capturing this, where they're going across the island and are getting all this information. And you can see, maybe in this video, maybe not, I didn't check out the whole thing, we can see that they are bringing out boxes upon boxes of evidence. And even they might show it in just a minute, the FBI start taping up boxes against the window so that way we can't see what's going on the inside. They are pretending as if this is some sort of integrity thing right now, that this is to pervert the integrity of the case. But this is the FBI that let Epstein get away back in 2008. Yeah, there they go, putting the boxes on the window. This is the FBI that let Epstein get away in 2008, get off with a sweetheart deal, a deal he should never have gotten. But they did. And then they let him die in prison. This was the closest the person who had all the dirt, all the information they could possibly get, they could possibly need on this international pedophile ring, and they let him die because of it. Now, we covered it in the past. We covered it in the last time that we were talking about Epstein, about the details of the prison that he was kept in, about how he apparently allegedly tried to commit suicide, but even though he was cellmates with a former cop who was murdered 4 people, and who even later on kind of said that he was asked to kill Epstein. And then he was put on suicide watch, then taken off suicide watch, about how the guards that were there were not his real guards. They fell asleep, the cameras weren't working, and then Epstein committed suicide using sheets that were as thin as tissue paper as a noose, and somehow hung himself from a 4-foot bunk. So we all know how ridiculous the story is. But again, new details are emerging. Now, here's something that ended up happening a little while ago. This was from October 10th, 2019. Okay. Wrong fuel caused plane crash that killed Tampa surgeon, NTSB says. Let's check out this story. A plane crash that killed a well-known plastic surgeon from Tampa Bay over the weekend was caused by the wrong kind of fuel being put in the plane, the National Transportation Safety Board said Thursday. Dr. Daniel Greenwald was flying a Piper Aerostar 602P in central Indiana on Saturday when he crashed in a field. The 59-year-old died from blunt force trauma in the crash, an Indiana coroner said. According to a report released Thursday by the NTSB, the plane crash happened shortly after Greenwald left the Kokomo Municipal Airport. Greenwald flew into Indiana that morning from the Peter O. Knight Airport in Tampa to provide training to a customer based on Kokomo Airport. NTSB officials said jet fuel was put in the plane Greenwald was flying instead of regular aviation gasoline that would have been used. It would have been used. 8 On Your Side spoke with aviation expert Captain John Cox, who tells us jet fuel would have caused the engine to quit. According to the NTSB report, the airplane employee who fueled the plane says he asked Greenwald twice if he wanted jet fuel. The employee claimed Greenwald said yes both times. However, Greenwald was an experienced general aviation pilot with hundreds of hours of flight time experience, which would have known the effect the jet fuel would have had on the plane engine. Captain Cox added that no pilot would ever say yes to putting jet fuel into that specific plane. So that's interesting. A doctor ends up dying because of the wrong fuel being put into his plane. That's kind of interesting. Now, what relevance does this have to Jeffrey Epstein? What difference does it make, this story? Well, the relevance to it is the fact that this is Jeffrey Epstein's surgeon. Yeah. Yes, it was. And we have this here. So the same story we just read, and this is from a guy called Rick Smith. This was Jeffrey Epstein's plastic surgeon. The plot thickens. And then he goes on to say, as a professional pilot, I can tell you that this is something rarer than getting struck by lightning. There are checks and double checks done before the plane is ever taken airborne. The different types of fuel are color-coded, and the chances of missing the loading mistake are almost non-existent even if the pilot missed it. Finally, the engines are performance checked under power at the end of the runway before takeoff. Engines would have to quit at this point. Okay. And then even their explanation was bogus, because we go right down here. It says, the airport employee who filled the jet told the NTSB he asked if he wanted jet fuel because the airplane looked like a jet airplane, the report said. Captain Cox tells 8 on your side, the Piper Aerostar 602P may look like a jet to someone who doesn't know better. But this is something that our deceased victim here, Dr. Daniel Greenwald, would know. I mean, he's flying this plane. He would know what type of fuel goes into it. When you're driving a car, you don't accidentally put diesel fuel into your car because you don't know any better. You know what type of fuel that car takes. It's no different if you're flying a plane, and especially not for an experienced pilot such as this. But yet Jeffrey Epstein's plastic surgeon ends up dead. And this is why I was saying it gives some credence to the idea that Jeffrey Epstein may have survived, because what relevance would it be to kill off his plastic surgeon? In a normal situation, none, because what does his plastic surgeon probably know about the whole situation with Epstein? Probably nothing. I mean, how much does your doctor know about your personal life and the things you're doing, especially the the terribly illegal things that you're doing? Probably nothing. But if you were rushed out of a prison when you were supposed to be dead, and then a plastic surgeon does surgery on your face in order to change what your identity looks like, in order to help you get out of the country, that's a big piece of the puzzle, a very big loose end that needs to be tied up. And it just was. It just was tied up. So no one has to worry about Dr. Greenwald speaking. No one has to worry about him saying that Jeffrey Epstein is still alive, because now he's dead in a convenient airplane crash. But again, this is a mistake that's, as it was put, rarer than getting struck by lightning. I think Dr. Greenwald should have bought his lottery ticket that morning too, because it sounds like he had just as good of an opportunity to win the lottery. So again, this is not proof that Jeffrey Epstein survived and that he was ushered out of the country, but I can't see any more relevance for why they would keep him alive, why they would kill Dr. Greenwald if it wasn't for the fact that he did surgery on Jeffrey Epstein before he ended up escaping to wherever that happens to be, wherever all over the world. Could it be in Israel? Could be somewhere else. Could be Bangkok, for all we know. But the Jeffrey Epstein story thickens. Now, I just want to end off. I really only want to talk about that, but there's one more thing that I saw that was bugging me. Not about Epstein at all. It's just a small little story we're going to talk before we end it off. And it was this story here. From Amy Meck. Merkel and her secret police demand kindergartners snitch on their right-wing parents. Taxpayer-funded brochures for kids identify girls wearing braids and clothes as potential terrorists. Merkel admits Stasi tried recruiting her while in college, yet pretends she turned them down. Let's just quickly watch this video here.
Eltern ausfindig zu und rechtsextreme Eltern ausfindig zu machen. Also, Beispiel aus der Broschüre kommt ein kleines Mädchen aus einem, Zitat, völkischen Elternhaus, nur weil es Zöpfe und ein Kleid trägt? Und sind die Eltern dadurch sofort rechtslastig oder rassistisch geoutet? Das sind Behauptungen, die da drin stehen. Und das ist tatsächlich krass. Wir wollen darüber reden mit dem ehemaligen Bezirksbürgermeister von Berlin-Neukölln, Heinz Buschkowski. Er ist heute Morgen unser Gast.
Guten Morgen.
Herr Buschkowski, als Sie von dieser Schnüffelfibel gehört haben und vor allem gehört haben, was drin steht und wie Erzieher handeln sollen, was war Ihr erster Gedanke?
Mein erster Gedanke war, das ist nicht wahr. Das sei ein Riesenjoke. Weil man kann sich das ja gar nicht vorstellen, dass Kindergärten plötzlich den Auftrag haben.
We really saw the most relevant part, where kindergartners, children, are being asked to snoop on their parents, their right-wing parents, as possible terrorists. When I heard this story, now first, before I actually say what I have to say, I also wanted to point out that Merkel just recently announced that she said that it's literal doublespeak. She says that Germany needs to take away the Germans' freedom of speech in order for them to be freer. If you can possibly believe that. But this actually ties in to what I was about to say. Because what I was about to say is, as I was watching this video the first time, and I was hearing what they were saying, this is a literal scene out of George Orwell's 1984. So we have the doublespeak, where you say something and it literally means the opposite, but you're supposed to hold these beliefs, because if you don't believe what Big Brother told you, then you had a good possibility of being re-educated, if not being unpersoned, in which you are disappear. They kill you and they erase any sort of trace of your existence. Now, in the early parts of the book, our protagonist, he is returning home. He's returning home, one second, sorry. So our protagonist is returning home. It kind of starts off with a general, sort of intro to the book, explaining sort of what's going on in this future. And then our protagonist, Winston Smith, ends up returning to his home. And before he gets into his apartment, or it's like right after he does, his neighbor comes to knock at his door and asks for help for something in her apartment. Now, her kids are running wild everywhere, you know? They've been indoctrinated by Big Brother. They've been indoctrinated, and their father isn't around. And the reason for that is because in this youth group that was held by Big Brother, they indoctrinate the children to be spies for Big Brother in the home. So what ended up happening was that their father was saying something against Big Brother, and his own children turned him in, and they unpersoned him, killed him off, and erased any traces in the public eye that he ever existed. No pictures, and if he ever made a story in the newspaper about it, they changed it. And this is literally what Germany is trying to do right now. When you are having children, you are trying to get children to tell the government to spy on your parents. You are literally in a 1984 situation. And that is scary. I mean, as far gone as we feel that our country may be, or the UK, or Sweden, or France, Germany is farther gone than any of us. What Angela Merkel is trying to do over there is pure evil. Pure evil. And like they said, like it was said in that tweet there, Merkel admits Stasi's tried recruiting her while she was in college, yet she pretends she turned them down. No, she didn't. Because this is exactly the type of thing that the Stasis would do in East Berlin before the fall of the Soviet Empire. This is exactly the type of thing that they do. So, authoritarianism, whether you want whatever side of the political aisle it is, whether that's communism or fascism or any sort of left or right wing authoritarianism, it's still alive in what's going in Germany. It is still alive all over the world. In fact, these governments are taking notes. They're taking notes on it. Germany is in a bad place. And unless something changes soon, that country is going to fall. All right. That's all I have for you today for the True North Report. Thank you all for tuning in, and remember, this is news every person needs to know.